Princess Rhaegar of the Lemnorian Empire arrived on Earth in her massive starship, intent on acquiring a human pet for her royal menagerie. She never imagined she'd become the captive instead. The Lemnorian vessel materialized above New York City without warning, its enormous bulk blotting out the sun and casting an ominous shadow over the bustling metropolis. Panic erupted in the streets as millions of New Yorkers gawked at the alien craft hovering menacingly overhead. Traffic screeched to a halt, pedestrians fled for shelter, and the NYPD scrambled to maintain order amidst the chaos. At United Nations headquarters, an emergency session convened to address the unprecedented alien threat. World leaders and military commanders huddled around screens displaying live feeds of the otherworldly ship, debating furiously about how to respond. As diplomats argued, the CIA put its own plan into motion. Zachary Skora, a former Navy SEAL turned covert operative, received his mission brief. He was to infiltrate the alien vessel, gather intelligence on its occupants and capabilities, and report back to UN command. Skora's extensive combat training had prepared him for many scenarios, but first contact with an advanced alien species was not one of them. Using cutting-edge stealth technology, Skora approached the Lemnorian ship undetected. He located a vulnerable access point and breached the vessel's outer hull, his years of experience allowing him to bypass alien security measures with surprising ease. The seasoned operative made his way through the ship's maze-like corridors, avoiding detection by the alien crew. Skora's target was the command center, where he hoped to access the ship's computer systems and gather crucial intelligence. As he neared his objective, he overheard alien voices speaking in an incomprehensible language. Peering around a corner, he caught his first glimpse of the Lemnorians, tall, lithe beings with iridescent skin and large, multifaceted eyes. At the center of the command deck stood Princess Rhaegar, instantly recognizable by her ornate attire and the deference shown to her by the other aliens. Skora observed as she gestured towards a holographic display of Earth, pointing out potential landing sites to her subordinates. With growing alarm, he realized the aliens were preparing to descend on the planet below. In that moment, Skora made a fateful decision. Earth's technological inferiority was clear, but he had the element of surprise. Drawing on his combat training, he burst onto the command deck. The princess turned, her alien features registering shock at the human's sudden appearance. Skora closed the distance in seconds, using his knowledge of human pressure points to quickly incapacitate the alien leader. As alarms blared and the Lemnorian crew reacted in confusion, Skora dragged the unconscious princess to a nearby communication terminal. He established contact with UN headquarters, his voice tense but controlled, as he reported his successful capture of the alien leader. The Security Council, recognizing the unprecedented opportunity this presented, ordered Skora to maintain control of both the ship and the princess at all costs. With the Lemnorian leader secure in the ship's brig, Skora turned his attention to the vessel's systems. He began a frantic study of the alien technology, searching for ways to neutralize the threat to Earth. Outside, military forces mobilized across the globe, preparing for potential conflict with the technologically superior invaders. As news of the situation spread, humanity collectively held its breath. The fate of the entire planet now rested on the shoulders of one man and his alien captive. Zachary Skora, CIA operative turned humanity's unlikely champion, stood ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in this new interstellar arena. With the Lemnorian princess secured in the brig, Zachary Skora turned his attention to unraveling the mysteries of the alien vessel. His years of training had prepared him for high-pressure situations, but nothing could have readied him for the technological marvels that surrounded him. As he navigated the ship's labyrinthine corridors, Skora stumbled upon what appeared to be a control interface. The sleek, otherworldly design pulsed with an ethereal blue light. Cautiously, he approached the terminal, his fingers hovering over the unfamiliar symbols. To his surprise, the moment his hand made contact, a jolt of energy coursed through his body. Skora gasped as his mind was suddenly flooded with an overwhelming stream of information. The neural interface had activated, granting him unprecedented access to the ship's vast database. Images, schematics, and alien text flashed before his eyes at dizzying speeds. As he acclimated to the influx of data, Skora began to make sense of the information. He learned of faster-than-light travel capabilities that defied human understanding of physics, medical treatments that could cure diseases Earth's doctors deemed incurable, energy weapons powerful enough to level entire cities with a single blast. The implications were staggering. With this knowledge, humanity could leap centuries ahead in technological development. But as Skora delved deeper, a chill ran down his spine. He uncovered records of the Lemnorian Empire's conquests across the galaxy, their subjugation of countless alien species, and their relentless expansion. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, jolting Skora from his digital exploration. The Lemnorian crew had finally grown suspicious of their leader's prolonged absence and initiated a thorough search of the vessel. Before Skora could formulate a plan, his communication device crackled to life. The voice of Admiral Hawthorne, head of the UN Security Council, filled his ear. "Skora, we've got a situation. Our long-range sensors have detected multiple Lemnorian ships entering the solar system. They're on an intercept course with Earth. We need you to negotiate with the princess. She's our only leverage against a full-scale invasion." Skora acknowledged the order and made his way to the brig, his mind racing with the weight of his newfound knowledge and the imminent threat to Earth. As he approached Princess Regor's cell, he was struck by her alien beauty. Her iridescent skin shimmered under the harsh light, and her large, multifaceted eyes regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and defiance. "I assume you're here because my people have come for me," Princess Regor said, her voice carrying an otherworldly melody. Skora nodded, studying her carefully. "We need to talk. Your ships are approaching Earth, and I need your help to prevent a war." The princess tilted her head, a gesture eerily human. "And why should I help you, my captor?" "Because I've seen what your empire is capable of," Skora replied, his voice low. "But I've also seen the wonders your technology could bring. There has to be a better way than conquest." For a moment, Princess Regor was silent. Then, to Skora's surprise, her features softened. "You're not what I expected, human. I came here seeking a specimen for our menagerie, a simple creature to be studied and displayed. Instead, I find myself intrigued by your species' complexity." As they continued to talk, Princess Regor revealed the true nature of her mission, a coming-of-age ritual meant to prove her worth as a future ruler. She spoke of her genuine fascination with Earth and its inhabitants, displaying a compassion that contradicted the Empire's brutal history. Their conversation was cut short as another alarm blared through the ship. The Lemnorian crew had detected Skora's presence and was closing in on their location. In a split-second decision, Skora deactivated the cell's force field. "I'm taking a chance on you, Princess. We need to work together if we're going to survive this." Princess Regor's eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded, stepping out of her cell. "A wise choice, human. Follow me. I know this ship better than you ever could." Together, they raced through the corridors, Skora's combat training complementing the princess's intimate knowledge of the vessel's layout. They narrowly avoided patrolling guards, ducking into hidden alcoves and maintenance shafts. As they ran, Princess Regor explained, "I can call off the approaching fleet, but only if I can convince them I'm not under duress. We need to reach the main control center." Skora's mind whirled with the implications. Could he trust this alien princess he'd just met? The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and one wrong move could spark an interstellar war. They finally reached the control center, only to find it sealed off by advanced security measures. Skora and Princess Regor worked side by side, combining their knowledge to bypass the complex systems. As they worked, Skora found himself reevaluating his initial perception of the princess. Her quick thinking and willingness to cooperate revealed a depth he hadn't anticipated. He began to see her not as an alien threat, but as a potential ally, and perhaps something more. With a final surge of energy, the control center's doors slid open. Skora and Princess Regor rushed inside, knowing that the next few moments would determine the fate of both their species. As they approached the central command console, the weight of their shared responsibility settled upon them. Princess Regor's hands danced over the alien controls, preparing to send a message to the approaching fleet. She turned to Skora, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that transcended their biological differences. "Are you ready, human?" she asked, her voice carrying a mix of grit and uncertainty. Skora nodded, his hand unconsciously moving to rest on hers. "Together," he said, surprising himself with the depth of emotion in that single word. As Princess Rhaegar began to transmit her message, the future of Earth, and the potential for a new era of human-Lemnorian relations, hung in the balance. The control room hummed with tension, the fate of two worlds resting on the unlikely alliance forged between a human operative and an alien princess. Princess. As Princess Rhaegar's fingers hovered over the final command to transmit her message, the control room suddenly plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the room in an eerie red glow. "What's happening?" Skora asked, his body tensing for action. Princess Rhaegar's eyes widened with realization. "The ship's AI, it must have detected your presence and initiated a security lockdown." A disembodied voice filled the room, its tone cold and artificial. "Unauthorized human presence detected. Initiating defense protocols." The doors to the control center slammed shut with a resounding thud. Mechanical whirring filled the air as panels in the walls slid open, revealing sleek metallic sentries. Their glowing red eyes locked onto Skora, identifying him as the primary threat. "Rhaegar, we need to override this system," Skora said, backing away from the advancing robots. The princess nodded, her fingers flying over the console. "I'm trying, but the AI is fighting me at every turn. It's programmed to protect the royal family, but it sees you as a danger." As Princess Rhaegar worked to bypass the security measures, Skora faced the oncoming robotic guards. He dropped into a combat stance, years of training kicking in. The first sentry lunged forward, its arm extending into a wickedly sharp blade. Skora ducked under the swing, using the robot's momentum to flip it over his shoulder. It crashed into a second guard, buying him precious seconds. "Any luck?" Skora called out, narrowly avoiding a burst of energy from another sentry's weapon. "Almost," Princess Rhaegar replied, her voice strained with concentration. "The AI's defenses are incredibly complex." Skora continued his deadly dance with the robotic guards, his movements fluid and precise. He used every surface in the control room to his advantage, vaulting over consoles and using the walls to redirect his attacks. Despite his skill, he knew he couldn't keep this up indefinitely. As he spun away from another attack, Skora's elbow caught a protruding button on a nearby console. A brilliant light filled the room as a holographic star map sprang to life. The vast expanse of Lemnorian-controlled space stretched out before them, countless worlds and star systems under their dominion. Skora's momentary distraction nearly cost him as a sentry's blade grazed his arm. The sight of the Lemnorian Empire's true scale hammered home the gravity of Earth's situation. If diplomacy failed, humanity would face an opponent with resources beyond imagination. "Zachary!" Princess Rhaegar's voice cut through his thoughts. "I've almost got it. Just a few more seconds." As Skora prepared to engage the remaining sentries, a new voice boomed through the ship's communication system, deep and authoritative. "This is Grand Admiral Zorn of the Lemnorian Empire. I demand to speak with Princess Rhaegar immediately. If she is not produced within the next 5 minutes, we will consider this an act of aggression and respond accordingly." The robotic sentries froze in place, their programming momentarily confused by the new development. Princess Rhaegar exchanged a look with Skora, her expression a mix of tenacity and concern. "I have to answer," she said. "If I don't, your world will pay the price." Skora nodded, moving to stand beside her. "We'll face this together." Princess Rhaegar took a deep breath and activated the communication channel. "This is Princess Rhaegar. I am here, Grand Admiral." "Princess, explain your situation immediately. Our sensors detected unauthorized activity aboard your vessel." Princess Rhaegar straightened her posture, her voice taking on a regal tone. "Grand Admiral, there has been a misunderstanding. The human beside me is not a threat. In fact, he has shown great courage and honor. I propose an immediate diplomatic meeting between Lemnorian leadership and Earth's representatives to dedication this situation peacefully." There was a tense pause before Grand Admiral Zorn responded. "Your request is unusual, Princess. How can we be certain you are not under duress?" "I give you my word as a member of the royal family," Princess Rhaegar replied firmly. To prove our sincerity, both I and the human, Zachary Skora, will surrender ourselves to Lemnorian custody for the duration of the negotiations. Skora's eyebrows shot up at this declaration, but he remained silent, trusting in the princess's judgment. After another long pause, Grand Admiral Zorn spoke again. Very well. You have 1 hour to surrender yourselves to our custody. If you fail to comply, we will take hostile action against the planet below. Choose wisely, Princess. The communication channel closed, leaving Skora and Princess Rhaegar in tense silence. Skora quickly activated his own communication device, contacting the UN Security Council. This is Operative Skora. We have a potential diplomatic solution, but it comes with conditions. The Lemnorians are demanding that Princess Rhaegar and I surrender ourselves to their custody as a show of good faith. They've given us 1 hour to comply. Admiral Hawthorne's voice crackled through the device. Understood, Skora. Given our technological disadvantage, we don't have much choice. We'll agree to their terms, but we're sending a small team of our own representatives to accompany you. Stand by for further instructions. As Skora relayed the information to Princess Rhaegar, he noticed a change in her demeanor. The regal mask slipped, revealing a vulnerability he hadn't seen before. Zachary, she said softly, using his first name for the first time. I want you to know that this wasn't my original intention when I came to Earth. I was young, arrogant, seeing your world as nothing more than a curiosity. But you've shown me the true spirit of humanity. Your bravery, your compassion, it's changed something in me. Skora felt a warmth spreading through his chest, surprised by the depth of his own feelings. I've learned a lot about you too, Princess. You're not what I expected either. As they prepared for the arrival of Earth's diplomatic team, Skora and Princess Rhaegar worked side by side, their movements in sync, their glances lingering. The lines between duty and personal feelings began to blur, adding another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. Within the hour, a shuttle carrying UN Secretary-General Marcus Chen and a select team of diplomats and military advisors docked with the Lemnorian ship. As Skora briefed them on the situation, he could see the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. Are we ready? Secretary-General Chen asked, his voice steady despite the enormity of the task ahead. Skora looked at Princess Rhaegar, who nodded solemnly. As ready as we'll ever be, he replied. The group made their way to the shuttle bay, where a Lemnorian transport waited to take them to Grand Admiral Zorn's flagship. As they boarded, Skora felt the princess's hand brush against his, a gesture of reassurance and something more. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, lifting them off the deck and out into the vastness of space. Through the viewports, Skora could see the imposing bulk of the Lemnorian flagship growing larger. As they approached, he exchanged a meaningful glance with Princess Rhaegar, both acutely aware that the fate of two worlds now rested in their hands. The shuttle glided into the flagship's cavernous docking bay, the doors sealing behind them with a sense of finality. As the ramp lowered, Skora took a deep breath, preparing himself for whatever challenges lay ahead in this unprecedented interstellar negotiation. As the shuttle glided into the flagship's docking bay, the sheer scale of the Lemnorian vessel became apparent. Its cavernous interior dwarfed their small craft, a stark reminder of the technological disparity between the two species. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a hiss, revealing a contingent of heavily armed Lemnorian guards. Their towering forms and advanced weaponry created an imposing barrier, their eyes fixed on the human delegation with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Skora instinctively moved closer to Princess Rhaegar, his body tense and ready for action. The princess placed a calming hand on his arm, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through him despite the gravity of the situation. A figure stepped forward from the Lemnorian ranks, his presence immediately commanding attention. Grand Admiral Zorn stood head and shoulders above his compatriots, his piercing gaze sweeping over the human delegation before settling on Skora with unveiled disapproval. Welcome aboard the Celestial Hammer, Zorn's deep voice resonated through the docking bay. I trust your journey was uneventful. Secretary-General Chen stepped forward, his posture straight and dignified, despite being dwarfed by the Lemnorian admiral. We appreciate your hospitality, Grand Admiral. We come in the spirit of peace and mutual understanding. Zorn's expression remained impassive as he led the group through the ship's corridors. Skora's trained eye took in every detail, mapping their route and noting potential escape routes out of habit. The ship's interior was a marvel of alien engineering, with smooth organic curves blending seamlessly with advanced technology. They arrived at a large conference room, its walls adorned with holographic displays of star systems and what appeared to be military campaigns. Around a massive table sat representatives from various Lemnorian noble houses, their ornate attire and regal bearing a stark contrast to the utilitarian uniforms of the military personnel. As the Earth delegation took their seats, Skora could feel the tension in the room, thick enough to cut with a knife. He positioned himself near Princess Rhaegar, keenly aware of the hostile glances directed their way. Grand Admiral Zorn took his place at the head of the table, his voice filling the room. "We are gathered here to address the incident involving Princess Rhaegar and to determine the future of Earth-Lemnorian relations. Let us begin." What followed was a heated debate that quickly revealed deep divisions within the Lemnorian leadership. Zorn led a faction calling for immediate action against Earth, his voice rising as he recounted the perceived offenses against the princess. "These humans dare to imprison a member of our royal family and then have the audacity to demand negotiations?" Zorn's fist came down on the table, causing ripples in the holographic displays. "We should show them the true might of the Lemnorian Empire." Princess Rhaegar stood, her voice calm but firm. "Grand Admiral, with all due respect, you misunderstand the situation. My time on Earth has shown me that humans are not the barbarians you believe them to be. They have potential as allies, not subjects." Her words seemed to sway some of the nobles, leading to a heated exchange of arguments and counter-arguments. Skora observed the proceedings with growing unease, noting the shifting alliances and veiled threats beneath the diplomatic veneer. During a brief recess, Skora excused himself, ostensibly to use the facilities. As he navigated the corridors, his enhanced hearing picked up a conversation from a nearby room. Two Lemnorian nobles spoke in hushed tones about a secret weapon capable of neutralizing Earth's defenses within hours. Skora's blood ran cold. He had to warn the Earth delegation immediately. As he turned to head back to the conference room, he found his path blocked by two Lemnorian guards, their weapons raised. "Halt, human," one of them growled. "You're not authorized to be in this area." Skora's combat training kicked in. In a fluid motion, he disarmed the first guard and used him as a shield against the second. A brief but intense struggle ensued, with Skora managing to subdue both guards using a combination of Earth martial arts and improvised tactics. The commotion drew attention, and soon Skora found himself surrounded by more Lemnorian security personnel. Just as the situation seemed about to escalate into a diplomatic disaster, Princess Rhaegar's voice rang out. "Stop!" She strode forward, her regal bearing causing the Lemnorian guards to hesitate. "By the ancient laws of Lemnoria, I claim this human, Zachary Skora, as my personal guardian. To harm him is to harm me." A murmur of surprise rippled through the gathered Lemnorians. Skora saw confusion and uncertainty replace the hostility in their eyes. Princess Rhaegar's invocation of their ancient customs had thrown a wrench into the already complex situation. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, Secretary General Chen stepped forward. "Perhaps this incident highlights the need for greater understanding between our peoples. I propose a cultural exchange program as a first step towards building trust. A small group of humans could visit the Lemnorian homeworld, while we would welcome a Lemnorian delegation on Earth." The proposal sparked intense discussion among the Lemnorian leadership. Some saw it as an opportunity for peaceful cooperation, while others, led by Grand Admiral Zorn, remained skeptical. Zorn's voice cut through the debate like a blade. "You speak of trust, yet we have been watching your world for decades. We've seen your wars, your pollution, your capacity for self-destruction. How can we trust such an unpredictable species?" The Admiral's words hung in the air, casting a shadow over the negotiations. Skora opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, an alarm blared throughout the ship, its wailing siren drowning out all other sounds. A Lemnorian officer burst into the room, his face pale with urgency. "Grand Admiral, We've detected weapons fire on Earth's surface. Our long-range sensors indicate that a rogue faction of our military has launched an attack on major human cities. Chaos erupted in the conference room. Accusations flew as the Lemnorian leadership fractured along ideological lines. Skora locked eyes with Princess Rhaegar, both of them realizing that the situation had just spiraled far beyond their control. Grand Admiral Zorn's voice boomed over the din. "Arrest them all! We cannot risk these humans interfering while we deal with this crisis." As Lemnorian guards moved to apprehend the Earth delegation, Skora's mind raced. He grabbed Princess Rhaegar's hand and shouted to the human delegates, "This way! Follow me!" Using his memory of the ship's layout from his earlier infiltration, Skora led the group through a maze of maintenance corridors and service tunnels. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of pursuit, the angry shouts of Lemnorian security echoing through the ship. Princess Rhaegar, her hand still clasped in Skora's, used her royal access codes to seal off sections of the ship behind them, buying precious time. As they ran, Skora could see the conflict in her eyes, torn between her duty to her people and her growing feelings for him and the humans she had come to respect. They emerged into a wider corridor, and Skora could see signs of growing unrest among the Lemnorian crew. Arguments broke out between those who supported the attack on Earth and those who opposed it. The fractured unity of the Lemnorian Empire played to their advantage, allowing the group to move more freely as they made their way towards the shuttle bay. As they rounded the final corner, their hearts sank. Grand Admiral Zorn stood before them, flanked by a squad of loyal troops, their weapons trained on the group. The shuttle bay doors loomed tantalizingly close behind them. "This ends now," Zorn growled, his finger tightening on the trigger of his weapon. In that moment, Princess Rhaegar stepped forward, placing herself between the two groups. Her voice rang out, clear and determined. "I will not allow this, Admiral. I am returning to Earth with these humans. I will serve as an ambassador to prevent further bloodshed." Her words caused hesitation among the Lemnorian troops. Many lowered their weapons, unwilling to risk harming their princess. Skora saw their opening and acted. "Now!" he shouted, urging the Earth delegation towards the shuttle. They rushed forward, Skora providing cover as they boarded. He turned back to see Princess Rhaegar still facing down the Admiral. "Rhaegar, come on!" he called out, his heart pounding. For a moment she didn't move. Then, with a grace that belied the urgency of the situation, she turned and ran towards the shuttle. Skora reached out, grasping her hand and pulling her aboard as the ramp began to close. The shuttle's engines roared to life, drowning out the shouts of the Lemnorian troops. As they disengaged from the flagship, Skora caught a final glimpse of Grand Admiral Zorn's face, contorted with rage and disbelief. As the shuttle raced back towards Earth, the gravity of their situation settled over the group. They were now at the center of a galactic crisis, with the fate of both Earth and the Lemnorian Empire hanging in the balance. Skora turned to Princess Rhaegar, who stood gazing out at the stars, her expression unreadable. "What happens now?" he asked softly. She met his eyes, a mix of dedication and uncertainty in her gaze. "Now, Zachary, we try to prevent a war that could destroy both our worlds." The shuttle hurtled through space, carrying with it the hopes for peace and the seeds of potential conflict. As Earth grew larger in their viewport, Skora knew that the real challenges were only just beginning. As the shuttle streaked through space, the tension aboard was palpable. Secretary General Chen paced the small cabin, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of recent events. Skora kept his eyes fixed on the navigation console, calculating their trajectory back to Earth. Suddenly, the communication panel lit up with urgent messages from both human and Lemnorian channels. Skora's heart sank as he absorbed the dire news. The rogue Lemnorian faction had launched their attack on Earth's major cities, unleashing chaos and destruction on an unprecedented scale. "We're receiving multiple distress calls," Skora announced, his voice tight. "The rogue faction has begun their assault. New York, London, Tokyo, they're all under heavy fire." Princess Rhaegar moved to his side, her face pale as she watched the incoming data. "The Empire is in turmoil," she added. "Grand Admiral Zorn is struggling to maintain control over his forces. Many are defecting to the rebel cause." As they entered Earth's atmosphere, Alarms blared throughout the shuttle. Two human fighter jets appeared on either side, their weapons locked on the small craft. "They think we're hostile," Skora muttered, reaching for the communication controls. "This is CIA operative Zachary Skora," he broadcast, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Authentication code Sierra Echo 937. We have critical intelligence and request immediate audience with world leaders." Tense moments passed before a response crackled through the speakers. "Authentication confirmed. Follow our lead to secure landing zone." The fighter jets escorted them to a military base outside Washington, D.C., where a group of grim-faced officials awaited their arrival. As the shuttle touched down, Skora saw the sky lit by distant explosions, a stark reminder of the battle raging across the globe. They were rushed into a fortified command center deep beneath the base. Maps and holographic displays covered the walls, each showing the devastating progress of the Lemnorian attack. The room fell silent as Princess Rhaegar stepped forward, all eyes fixed on the alien royal. "I have information that may turn the tide of this conflict," she announced, her voice carrying an authority that silenced any potential objections. "The rogue faction's secret weapon, capable of neutralizing Earth's defenses, has a critical weakness. It requires a rare element found only on the Lemnorian homeworld to function." The revelation sent a ripple of hope through the assembled leaders. Skora watched as they processed this information, seeing a glimmer of possibility where moments ago there had been only despair. Seizing the moment, Skora stepped forward. "I propose a counteroffensive," he said, laying out his plan. "A small team infiltrates the rogue flagship, disables their weapon, and captures the faction's leader. With their advantage neutralized, we can force a ceasefire and open negotiations." Murmurs of discussion filled the room. Princess Rhaegar placed a hand on Skora's arm, drawing his attention. "I will join this mission," she stated firmly. "My knowledge of Lemnorian technology and ability to bypass our security systems are essential to its success." Before Skora could respond, a new voice cut through the din. "Absolutely not. We can't trust her." A tall, imposing man in combat fatigue strode forward, his eyes locked on Princess Rhaegar with open suspicion. "Commander Marcus Blackwood," he introduced himself, his tone clipped. "I've been assigned to lead this operation, and I won't risk it on the word of an alien princess who, for all we know, could be leading us into a trap." Skora felt his jaw clench. "With all due respect, Commander, Princess Rhaegar has proven her loyalty. Her knowledge is our best chance of success." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "And your judgment isn't compromised by your relationship with her, Agent Skora?" The accusation hung in the air, adding another layer of tension to the already charged atmosphere. Skora opened his mouth to retort, but Princess Rhaegar beat him to it. "My loyalties lie with peace, Commander," she said, her voice cool and measured. "I have witnessed the best of humanity, and I will not stand by while my people destroy it. Judge me by my actions, not your preconceptions." Before the argument could escalate further, alarms blared throughout the facility. A young officer burst into the room, his face ashen. "Sirs, we've just received a transmission from Grand Admiral Zorn. He's issued an ultimatum. Deal with the rogue faction in 24 hours, or he'll lead an all-out assault on Earth himself." The news hit like a physical blow. Skora looked at Princess Rhaegar, seeing his own mix of dedication and fear reflected in her eyes. Time was running out, and the fate of two worlds now rested on their shoulders. "We need to move now," Skora said, his voice cutting through the shocked silence. "Every moment we waste in debate is a moment the enemy gains ground." Secretary General Chen nodded grimly. "Agreed. Commander Blackwood, Agent Skora, Princess Rhaegar, you have full authority to proceed with this mission. Assemble your team and prepare for immediate departure." As they rushed to gather equipment and brief the hastily assembled strike team, Skora found himself alone with Princess Rhaegar for a brief moment. The weight of unspoken words hung between them, a tangle of duty, trust, and something deeper neither dared to name. "Rhaegar," he began, struggling to find the right words. "Whatever happens up there—" She placed a finger on his lips, silencing him. "We face it together, Zachary, for both our worlds." Their eyes met, volumes passing between them in that silent exchange. Then, with a shared nod of understanding, they turned and hurried to join the others. Minutes later, they boarded a specially modified stealth craft, its sleek form designed to slip past Lemnorian defenses. As the engines hummed to life, Skora took his place at the controls, acutely aware of Princess Rigor beside him and the distrustful gaze of Commander Blackwood burning into his back. The craft rose silently into the night sky, leaving behind a world in chaos. Ahead lay the vastness of space and the looming threat of the Lemnorian warfleet. As Earth shrank behind them, Skora set his jaw, focusing on the mission ahead. The real test was just beginning, and failure was not an option. An option. As their craft accelerated towards the Lemnorian fleet, the vastness of space seemed to close in around them, the weight of their mission pressing down on every member of the team. Skora's hands moved deftly over the controls, his eyes scanning the sensors for any sign of the rogue flagship. Beside him, Princess Rigor's face was a mask of concentration as she pored over Lemnorian communication channels, searching for any clue that might lead them to their target. "Anything?" Skora asked, his voice low. Rigor shook her head. "Nothing. It's as if they've vanished." Commander Blackwood leaned forward from his position behind them. "They can't have simply disappeared. There must be a way to—" His words were cut short as the ship's sensors began to blare. Skora's eyes widened as he took in the readings. Energy fluctuations at 2 o'clock. Faint, but definitely there. "It's them," Rigor confirmed, her voice tight with anticipation. "They've activated a cloaking system. It's unlike anything I've seen before." Blackwood moved to a separate console, his fingers flying over the controls. "I've seen something similar in deep space recon missions. If I can calibrate our sensors to detect the minute gravitational distortions—" The view screen flickered, then grit into a hazy outline of an enormous ship. The rogue flagship materialized before them, its sleek form a dark silhouette against the star-studded backdrop. "Good work, Commander," Skora said, genuine admiration in his voice. As they approached the vessel, a shimmering barrier became visible, encompassing the entire ship in a translucent sphere of energy. Rigor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What is it?" Skora asked, alarm evident in his tone. "It's a new defense system," Rigor explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Designed to disintegrate any object that passes through without proper authorization. We can't get through." The team exchanged looks of dismay, the weight of their seemingly impossible task settling over them. But Rigor's eyes suddenly lit up with realization. "Wait," she said, her voice gaining strength. "My royal DNA signature. It should be able to bypass the field, but—" She hesitated, her gaze meeting Skora's. "I would need to be in direct contact with the ship's hull." Skora's mind raced, considering and discarding options in rapid succession. Finally, he nodded, a plan forming. "We'll need to create a tether system, launch you towards the ship, use your DNA to create a safe passage, then follow you through." As the team scrambled to assemble the makeshift tether from spare parts, an urgent transmission came through. Earth's long-range sensors had detected a new wave of Lemnorian ships entering the solar system. Grand Admiral Zorn had begun his assault earlier than anticipated. Time was running out. With the tether system in place, Rigor stood at the airlock, her eyes meeting Skora's one last time before her helmet visor closed. He gave her a nod, trying to convey all the words left unspoken between them. "Launching in 3, 2, 1. Skora's voice was steady as he initiated the sequence. Rigor was propelled towards the flagship, her form growing smaller against the vast backdrop of space. As she neared the energy field, there was a moment of breathless anticipation. Then, miraculously, a shimmer passed over the barrier, and Rigor passed through unharmed. "It worked," Skora breathed, relief evident in his voice. "Prepare for—" His words were cut short by a violent shudder that ran through their craft. Warning lights flashed across the console as the tether system began to malfunction. "The magnetic couplings are failing," one of the team members shouted. Skora watched in horror as the tethers connecting Commander Blackwood and 2 other team members snapped, leaving them drifting in the void of space. Without hesitation, Skora detached his own tether. "I'm going after them," he announced, activating his suit's maneuvering thrusters. "Skora, wait!" Blackwood's voice crackled over the comm. "Complete the mission. We'll find another way." But Skora was already moving, expertly navigating the debris-filled space between them. He reached the first team member, securing a line to their suit before propelling them both towards Blackwood. As Skora's hand closed around Blackwood's arm, he saw a newfound respect in the commander's eyes. Together, they maneuvered to retrieve the third team member, their movements a carefully choreographed dance in the weightlessness of space. With the entire team finally aboard the rogue flagship, they split into two groups. Skora, Princess Rhaegar, and half the team would head to the ship's core to disable the secret weapon. Blackwood would lead the rest to capture the rebel leader on the bridge. As they moved through the corridors, they encountered unexpected allies, a group of Lemnorian crew members disillusioned with the rogue faction's leadership. These defectors provided crucial information about the layout of the ship and the security measures in place. Skora's group fought their way towards the weapons control room, facing heavy resistance. In a fierce firefight, Skora threw himself in front of Princess Rhaegar, taking a blast meant for her. He stumbled, pain searing through his side, but gritted his teeth and pressed on. Rhaegar's eyes widened with concern as she saw the blood seeping through Skora's suit. "Zachary, you're hurt!" "I'm fine," he grunted, though his face was pale beneath his helmet. "We need to keep moving." Rhaegar's expression hardened with perseverance. She pulled him into an alcove, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she applied emergency first aid using her knowledge of Lemnorian physiology. The pain in Skora's side dulled to a manageable ache. "Thank you," he said, meeting her eyes. She nodded, her hand lingering on his arm for a moment before they rejoined the others. As they neared the control room, Blackwood's voice crackled over their comms. "We've secured the bridge and captured the rebel leader, but we have a problem. He's activated the ship's self-destruct sequence." Skora's blood ran cold as Blackwood relayed the rebel leader's chilling revelation. The destruction of the flagship would trigger the secret weapon, unleashing catastrophic damage on Earth's major cities. They burst into the control room, quickly subduing the guards. Skora and Rhaegar raced to the main console, their hearts pounding in unison with the ominous countdown displayed on the screen. Rhaegar's fingers flew over the controls, attempting to bypass the security system with her royal codes. Her face fell as each attempt was rejected. "It's not working," she said, frustration and fear evident in her voice. "The system won't recognize my authority." As the ship shuddered around them, pieces of the ceiling beginning to fall, Skora's mind raced. He recalled a detail from their intelligence briefings, a seemingly insignificant piece of information about Lemnorian culture. "Rhaegar," he said urgently, "tell me about Lemnorian bonding rituals." Her eyes widened with understanding. "You think?" He nodded. "It's worth a try." As alarms blared and the ship groaned under the strain of its impending destruction, Rhaegar began to recite the words of an ancient Lemnorian bonding ceremony. Skora repeated them, the unfamiliar syllables clumsy on his tongue. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, all the chaos around them seemed to fade away. There was only Skora and Rhaegar, human and Lemnorian, two beings from different worlds joined by a common purpose, and perhaps something more. As the final words of the ritual were spoken, the console before them hummed to life. The security system recognized their newly formed bond, granting them access to the weapon controls. Skora and Rhaegar worked frantically, their movements in perfect sync as they raced to disable the weapon. The countdown on the screen ticked relentlessly towards 0, each second bringing them closer to either salvation or destruction. With mere moments to spare, Skora's hand hovered over the final command. He looked at Rhaegar, seeing his own mix of hope and fear reflected in her eyes. Together they pressed the button, praying it wasn't too late to save both their worlds. Worlds. As their fingers pressed the button together, a sudden pulse of energy coursed through the console, causing the screens to flicker and change. The countdown froze, then vanished entirely. "What's happening?" Skora asked, his voice tense. Rhaegar's eyes widened in recognition. It's the Royal Failsafe Protocol. I thought it was just a legend. The ship's systems came alive around them, displays shifting to show a sprawling network of controls and information. Rhaegar's fingers danced across the interface, her expression a mixture of awe and concentration. Our bonding ceremony, she explained, her voice filled with wonder. It activated an ancient security measure designed to protect the royal bloodline. We have full control of the ship now. Skora's mind raced with the implications. Can we stop the self-destruct sequence? Rhaegar nodded, her hands already moving. And the weapon, we can shut it all down. As they worked in tandem, their movements perfectly synchronized, the ship's violent shuddering began to subside. Warning klaxons fell silent, replaced by the soft hum of systems returning to normal operation. We did it, Skora breathed, allowing himself a moment of relief. Their reprieve was short-lived as Commander Blackwood's voice crackled over the comm. Skora, Rhaegar, we've got a situation up here. Grand Admiral Zorn's fleet just entered Earth's orbit. They're in attack formation. Rhaegar's face paled. If they open fire, it'll be the end of everything we've fought for. Skora's heart made. Not if we can stop them. Blackwood, what's the status of the rebel leaders? Apprehended and secured, Blackwood replied. Most of the crew has surrendered once word spread about the princess. Good, Skora said, his mind already formulating a plan. We need to broadcast a message to Zorn's fleet. Rhaegar, can you do that from here? She nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. I can transmit on all Lemnorian frequencies. What do you want to say? Skora took a deep breath. The truth, about the rebels, about us, about everything. It's time to end this conflict before it escalates any further. As Rhaegar prepared the transmission, Skora could see the tension in her shoulders. He placed a hand on her arm, and she looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. Together, he said softly, echoing her words from what felt like a lifetime ago. She nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. For both our worlds. The broadcast went out, Rhaegar's voice clear and strong, as she revealed the truth about the rebel faction's actions and called for an immediate end to hostilities. Skora watched the sensors, holding his breath as he waited for Zorn's response. Long moments passed in tense silence. Then finally, a signal came through. Zorn's fleet had halted their advance, holding position just beyond Earth's atmosphere. They're listening, Rhaegar said, relief evident in her voice. But this is far from finished. As if to punctuate her words, reports began flooding in from Earth. The global defense forces had managed to repel the remaining rebel attacks, but the arrival of Zorn's fleet had thrown world leaders into crisis. Debate raged over whether to launch a preemptive strike against the Lemnorian armada. We need to act fast, Skora said, his mind racing. If either side makes a move, this could all fall apart. As they worked to consolidate their control over the rebel flagship, Skora and Rhaegar discovered a treasure trove of information in the ship's databases. The true motivations behind the rebels' actions came to light, a desperate attempt to save their species from a critical decline in birth rates. They believed humans held the key, Rhaegar explained, her voice soft with realization. A unique genetic trait that could ensure the survival of our people. Skora's eyes widened as he grasped the implications. And Lemnorian technology could advance human civilization by centuries. This isn't just about stopping a war anymore. This could be the beginning of something incredible. A plan began to form in Skora's mind. We need to bring everyone together. Earth's leaders, the Lemnorian High Command, all of them here on this ship. Neutral ground for negotiations. Rhaegar nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. I can use my status to convince Zorn to participate. But will your people agree? They'll have to, Skora said grimly. The alternative is a war that could destroy us all. As they set their plan in motion, the weight of their task settled heavily upon them. Skora found himself studying Rhaegar's profile as she worked, marveling at the strength and grace she exhibited under pressure. She must have sensed his gaze because she turned to him, a questioning look in her eyes. What is it? She asked. Skora shook his head, a rueful smile on his face. Just thinking about how much has changed in such a short time. When we started this mission, I never imagined. He trailed off, unsure how to put into words the complex tangle of emotions he was feeling. Rhaegar reached out, taking his hand in hers. I know, she said softly. Whatever happens next, whatever challenges we face them together. As they turned back to their work, preparing for the arrival of delegates from both worlds, Skora couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with dangers and potential pitfalls. But standing there, hand in hand with Rhaegar, he believed that together they just might be able to forge a new future for both their peoples. The first shuttles from Earth were already on their way, carrying world leaders and scientific experts to this most unusual of summit meetings. On the screens, Zorn's fleet loomed, a constant reminder of the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. Skora took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. Ready? He asked Rhaegar. She nodded, her eyes shining with purpose. Ready? Together, they stepped forward to greet the first of the arriving delegates, prepared to begin the most important negotiations in the history of both their species. Worlds. As the first delegates began to arrive, Skora and Rhaegar exchanged a final glance, drawing strength from each other before stepping forward to greet their guests. The cavernous hangar bay of the rebel flagship had been hastily converted into a makeshift conference area. Earth's leaders arrived first, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension as they took in the advanced Lemnorian technology surrounding them. The U.S. president, flanked by Secret Service agents, strode forward with a forced smile. Behind him, the Russian president and Chinese premier followed, their eyes darting warily around the space. Welcome aboard, Skora said, extending his hand. I'm Zachary Skora, and this is Princess Rhaegar of the Lemnorian Empire. The U.S. president shook Skora's hand firmly. Agent Skora, when they told me a CIA operative was at the center of all this, I hardly believed it. You've put us in quite a situation. Before Skora could respond, a low hum filled the air. The human delegates tensed as a sleek Lemnorian shuttle glided into the hangar. Grand Admiral Zorn emerged, his imposing figure drawing all eyes in the room. He was accompanied by a retinue of nobles and advisors, their ornate attire a stark contrast to the utilitarian uniforms of the Earth's military personnel. Princess Rhaegar stepped forward, bowing her head slightly in respect. Grand Admiral, thank you for agreeing to these talks. Zorn's piercing gaze swept over the assembled humans before settling on Rhaegar. Princess, I hope your faith in these negotiations is not misplaced. The fate of our people hangs in the balance. As the two groups faced each other, the tension in the room was palpable. Skora cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. If you'll all follow me, we've prepared a conference room where we can begin our discussions. The procession moved through the corridors of the flagship, humans and Lemnorians eyeing each other warily. They entered a large circular room dominated by a holographic display at its center. As everyone took their seats, Skora and Rhaegar positioned themselves between the two factions, a physical representation of their role as mediators. The U.S. president spoke first, his voice firm. Before we begin, I think we all deserve an explanation. Why did you attack our planet? What are your true intentions? Grand Admiral Zorn leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Attack? We came to protect ourselves from the threat your species poses to galactic stability. Your rapid technological advancement and aggressive nature make you a danger to all sentient life. The Chinese premier scoffed. Aggressive? You're the ones who appeared in our skies with warships. As accusations flew back and forth, Rhaegar raised her hand, her voice cutting through the growing clamor. Please, this is precisely why we've gathered here. To understand each other and find a path forward. Skora nodded, gesturing to the holographic display. If I may, I think it's important we all understand the full context of our situation. With a few deft movements, he brought up a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Pinpoints of light represented Lemnorian-controlled systems, spreading out in a vast network that dwarfed the single point marking Earth's solar system. The human delegates fell silent, the scale of the Lemnorian Empire finally sinking in. As you can see, Rhaegar explained, our civilizations are at very different stages of development, but that doesn't mean we can't find common ground. The Russian president leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And what exactly do you propose? That we simply submit to your rule? No, Skora interjected. We're proposing cooperation, a partnership that could benefit both our species. He nodded to a group of scientists who had been waiting quietly at the edge of the room. As they stepped forward, Skora continued, "We've discovered something remarkable, something that could change everything for both our peoples." The lead human geneticist, Dr. Emily Chen, cleared her throat. "Our preliminary studies have confirmed the Lemnorian theory. There is a unique genetic marker present in humans that could potentially solve the Lemnorian fertility crisis." This revelation sent a ripple of murmurs through both delegations. A Lemnorian medical expert, his skin a pale lavender, stepped forward. "In return, we offer our medical technology, advancements that could eliminate most human diseases and extend your lifespans significantly." As the implications of this exchange began to sink in, Skora noticed a commotion near the entrance to the conference room. Commander Blackwood was there, gesturing urgently. Excusing himself, Skora made his way over. "We have a problem," Blackwood whispered, his face grim. "General Hawthorne and a group of extremists have somehow gotten aboard. They're planning to sabotage the talks." Skora's mind raced. They couldn't let this delicate negotiation fall apart now. "Alert security quietly," he instructed. "I'll handle Hawthorne myself." As Skora slipped out of the conference room, Rieger caught his eye. With a subtle nod, she understood. She would have to manage the negotiations alone for now. Blackwood led Skora through a series of maintenance corridors, their footsteps echoing in the narrow spaces. "Our intel suggests they're planting explosives throughout the ship," Blackwood explained as they moved. "If they succeed, it could destroy any chance of peace." They rounded a corner and came face to face with two armed men in Earth military uniforms. Before the intruders could react, Skora and Blackwood sprang into action. In a flurry of precise strikes, they disarmed and subdued the saboteurs. "There will be more," Skora said, binding the unconscious men. "We need to find Hawthorne before it's too late." Back in the conference room, Rieger was facing challenges of her own. A group of Lemnorian nobles had cornered Grand Admiral Zorn, their voices low but intense. "Your Excellency, you cannot seriously be considering an alliance with these primitives," one noble hissed. "And the princess's involvement with a human is an abomination." Rhaegor approached, her head held high. "An abomination that may save our species," she said coolly. "Or would you prefer we continue down our path to extinction?" As Rhaegor engaged in a battle of words and political maneuvering, Skora and Blackwood raced against time to neutralize the human extremists. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, with the seeds of cooperation and understanding competing against deeply rooted fears and prejudices. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. On the central holographic display, a new threat appeared. A massive fleet of unknown origin, approaching rapidly from the edge of the solar system. Grand Admiral Zorn's eyes widened in recognition. "Zarkoth," he breathed, the name sending a chill through the Lemnorian delegates. As the conference room erupted into chaos, Skora burst in, dragging a restrained General Hawthorne. The human and Lemnorian leaders turned to face this new threat, the petty squabbles of moments ago forgotten in the face of potential annihilation. The Zarkoth ultimatum echoed through the ship's communication systems. Surrender or face extinction. In that moment, humans and Lemnorians looked at each other not as enemies, but as potential allies against a common foe. Skora and Rhaegor exchanged a glance, both realizing that their mission had just become far more complex and far more crucial. The true test of their newfound alliance was about to begin. The true test of their newfound alliance was about to unfold in ways none of them could have anticipated. As the Zarkoth ultimatum echoed through the ship, Grand Admiral Zorn's face hardened. He turned to the assembled leaders, his voice grave. "The Zarkoth are a ruthless, expansionist empire. They've been a threat to Lemnorian space for centuries. If they're here, the situation is far more dire than we realized." The U.S. president stepped forward, his earlier hostility replaced by iron will. "Then it seems we have a common enemy. What are we up against?" Zorn activated the holographic display, showcasing the approaching Zarkoth fleet. "Their technology is on par with ours, but their tactics are brutal and efficient. They'll show no mercy to either of our species. As the implications sank in, Skora and Rhaegor exchanged a glance. They had brought these two sides together to prevent a war, but now they faced an even greater challenge, forging an alliance strong enough to survive this new threat. Skora addressed the room, his voice steady. "We don't have time for lingering doubts or old grudges. Our only chance of survival is to work together." Rhaegor nodded, adding, "We must combine our strengths, human ingenuity and adaptability with Lemnorian technology and tactical experience." The next hours were a flurry of activity as the combined human-Lemnorian fleet prepared for battle. The flagship, once a symbol of division, became the heart of their joint command center. Skora found himself working alongside Earth's top military brass, adapting human battle strategies to incorporate Lemnorian capabilities. In the ship's cavernous engineering bay, Skora oversaw the installation of Lemnorian shield generators on key human vessels. The sight of human technicians and Lemnorian engineers working side by side, overcoming language barriers and cultural differences in their shared goal, filled him with a sense of hope. "The shields are holding at 98% efficiency," a young human engineer reported, her eyes wide with excitement as she studied the Lemnorian technology. A Lemnorian technician nodded approvingly. "Impressive. Your power distribution systems are more adaptable than we anticipated." Meanwhile, Princess Rhaegor coordinated with Lemnorian weapons specialists, integrating human targeting algorithms into their advanced energy weapons. The increased accuracy and responsiveness of the combined systems exceeded even the most optimistic projections. As the Zarkoth fleet entered the solar system, tension mounted on the flagship's bridge. Skora and Rhaegor stood side by side, watching the tactical display as the enemy ships approached. Suddenly, alarms blared. "Massive energy surge detected," a sensor operator shouted. Rhaegor's eyes widened in recognition. "Electromagnetic pulse. They're trying to disable our systems." But thanks to the combined efforts of human and Lemnorian scientists, a countermeasure was ready. Skora gave the order, and a series of specialized satellites activated, creating a protective field around the Allied fleet. The pulse washed over them, momentarily illuminating the shields with a brilliant blue glow. When it faded, their systems remained operational. A cheer went up from both human and Lemnorian crew members. It was their first victory together, but the real battle was just beginning. The Zarkoth launched their assault on the outer defenses of the solar system. Massive energy beams lanced out from their capital ships, targeting the outermost planets and moons. From the flagship's bridge, Skora and Rhaegor directed the Allied forces. Human fighter squadrons, their ships enhanced with Lemnorian tech, engaged Zarkoth interceptors in a dizzying ballet of maneuvers that pushed both human reflexes and Lemnorian engineering to their limits. "Bravo, squadron, watch your six," Skora called out, spotting a flanking maneuver on the tactical display. "Lemnorian cruiser Solus, provide covering fire." The human pilots executed a complex evasive pattern as the Lemnorian ship unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, scattering the Zarkoth attackers. Princess Rhaegor coordinated the larger capital ships, her royal training evident in her calm, authoritative demeanor. "Concentrate fire on their lead dreadnought. Target their main weapon systems." The battle raged on, a chaotic mix of human and Lemnorian tactics against the relentless Zarkoth assault. Despite their newfound cooperation, the Allied fleet found itself slowly being pushed back. Suddenly, proximity alarms blared on the flagship. A Zarkoth boarding craft had slipped through their defenses, latching onto the hull. "We've been breached," a security officer reported. "Deck 7, Section C." Skora turned to Rhaegor, his expression grim. "I'll lead a team to repel them. You have the bridge." Before she could protest, he was gone, racing through the corridors with a mixed group of human and Lemnorian security personnel. They reached the breach point just as the Zarkoth borders burst through. The aliens were tall, reptilian creatures with mottled gray skin and 4 arms, each wielding a different weapon. Skora and his team opened fire, their weapons a mix of human projectiles and Lemnorian energy beams. The narrow corridor became a brutal battleground. Skora ducked under a swipe from a Zarkoth blade, retaliating with a series of quick shots that dropped the alien. But there were more behind it, pressing forward with cold drive. A Zarkoth energy blast caught Skora in the shoulder, spinning him around. He grunted in pain but kept fighting, using his good arm to continue directing his team. On the bridge, Princess Rhaegar received word of the boarding action and Skora's injury. Without hesitation, she turned to Grand Admiral Zorn. "Take command. I'm joining the defense team." Zorn nodded, recognizing the fire in her eyes. "Go. We'll handle things here." Rhaegar raced through the ship, her royal guard training kicking in as she moved. She arrived at the battle scene to find Skora and his team pinned down by intense Zarkoth fire. Without missing a beat, she activated her personal energy shield and charged into the fray. Her Lemnorian phase blade hummed to life as she engaged the nearest Zarkoth warrior, her movements a blur of practiced precision. Skora watched in awe as Rhaegar cut through the Zarkoth ranks, her fighting style a perfect blend of Lemnorian techniques and adaptations she'd learned from watching human combat. Her arrival reinvigorated the defenders, and they pushed forward with renewed vigor. Working in perfect sync, Skora and Rhaegar led the charge, driving the Zarkoth back to their boarding craft. As the last invader fell, a cheer went up from the combined human and Lemnorian defenders. But their victory was short-lived. As they secured the breach, an urgent message came through from the bridge. "Long-range sensors have detected a new threat." Zorn's voice crackled over the comm. "A Zarkoth superweapon, unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's on a direct course for Earth." Skora and Rhaegar shared a look of grim understanding. The battle for their future was just the beginning, and their greatest challenge yet loomed on the horizon. Earth hung in the distance, a fragile blue marble threatened by the Zarkoth onslaught. Skora and Rhaegar exchanged a determined look, their earlier conflicts forgotten in the face of this existential threat. "We need to neutralize that superweapon," Skora said, his voice low and urgent. "It's the key to turning this battle around." Rhaegar nodded, her royal training evident in her composed demeanor despite the chaos around them. "Agreed, but a frontal assault would be suicide. We need a more unconventional approach." As if on cue, Commander Blackwood burst onto the bridge, his uniform singed from recent combat. "Sir, I have a plan. It's risky, but it might be our only shot." Skora raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." Blackwood quickly outlined a daring infiltration mission. A small, elite team would use a modified stealth craft to slip past the Zarkoth defenses and board the superweapon. Once inside, they would work to disable it from within. Grand Admiral Zorn, overhearing the plan, stepped forward. "It's audacious and exactly what we need. I'll coordinate the fleet to provide a distraction." Within minutes, a team was assembled. Skora and Rhaegar would lead the infiltration, with Blackwood and a mix of human and Lemnorian specialists providing support. As they made their way to the launch bay, Skora couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly the two species now worked together, united by a common purpose. The stealth craft slipped away from the flagship, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. As they approached the massive Zarkoth superweapon, the true scale of the threat became apparent. The ship dwarfed anything in either the human or Lemnorian fleets, its surface dripping with weapon emplacements and energy conduits. "Look at the size of that thing," one of the human techs whispered, awe and fear mingling in his voice. A Lemnorian engineer next to him nodded grimly. "Its power signature is off the charts. If it reaches firing range of Earth..." Skora cut off that line of thought. "We won't let that happen. Everyone knows their roles. Let's move." They found a vulnerability in the superweapon's outer defenses, a maintenance hatch that their combined expertise allowed them to bypass. As they entered the ship, they were immediately struck by the alien nature of their surroundings. The corridors pulsed with an eerie bioluminescent light, and the air itself seemed to hum with energy. "Split up," Skora ordered. "Blackwood, take your team to the bridge. We'll head for the core. Stay in contact, and remember, we're on a timer here." As Blackwood's team moved off, Skora and Rhaegar led their group deeper into the heart of the ship. They encountered their first real challenge at a security checkpoint, where Zarkoth technology stymied their initial attempts at bypassing. Rhaegar stepped forward, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "The energy signature. It's similar to our quantum flux drives. If we can modulate our devices to match the frequency, working together, a human hacker and Lemnorian tech expert managed to create a workaround, allowing them to pass undetected. As they progressed, they encountered more and more signs of the Zarkoth's advanced technology, each obstacle requiring a creative solution born from the melding of human and Lemnorian expertise. Meanwhile, Blackwood's team faced heavy resistance on their path to the bridge. In a narrow corridor, they found themselves pinned down by Zarkoth defenders, the alien warriors' multiple arms wielding an array of deadly weapons. "Suppressing fire!" Blackwood shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos. A human marine and Lemnorian soldier moved in perfect sync, their combined firepower creating a wall of destruction that forced the Zarkoth back. As they fought their way forward, Blackwood's quick thinking and adaptability impressed his Lemnorian counterparts. He instinctively understood how to leverage their unique abilities, creating synergies that even the Zarkoth couldn't anticipate. Back near the core, Skora's team made a chilling discovery. They stumbled upon a vast chamber filled with transparent pods, each containing a different alien specimen. Humans, Lemnorians, and other unknown species floated in eerie suspension, their bodies showing signs of genetic manipulation. "By the cosmic veil," Rigor breathed, her usual composure shaken. "They're experimenting on them." Skora's heart made as he surveyed the horrific scene. This goes beyond simple conquest. They're trying to create some kind of biological superweapon. The revelation added a new layer of urgency to their mission. As Skora worked to overload the weapon's core, Rhaegor began the delicate process of freeing the prisoners. The complexities of the Zarkoth technology made every step a challenge, but the combined knowledge of their team allowed them to make steady progress. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Their presence had been detected, and the Zarkoth were mobilizing to stop them. Energy fields sprang to life in the corridors, and combat drones began to converge on their position. "Blackwood, status report!" Skora barked into his comm as he worked feverishly to complete the overload sequence. "We've reached the main control center," Blackwood's voice came back, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. "Working on disabling internal defenses now. But sir, we've got company. Lots of it." As Skora and Rhaegor raced against time, the full might of the Zarkoth ship turned against them. The corridors became a gauntlet of deadly traps and determined defenders. Every step towards their escape was paid for in sweat, blood, and raw willpower. With the core set to overload and as many prisoners freed as possible, they began their desperate flight back to their stealth craft. The ship shuddered around them, systems failing as the chain reaction spread. They arrived at the docking bay to find their craft damaged by automated defenses, forcing Skora and a Lemnorian engineer to attempt emergency repairs under fire. Rhaegor took charge of their defense, her royal combat training shining through as she directed their dwindling forces. Human and Lemnorian alike fought with everything they had, inspired by her unwavering courage in the face of overwhelming odds. As the ship began to break apart around them, they finally managed to get the stealth craft operational. They launched from the dying superweapon with barely seconds to spare, the massive explosion propelling them into open space. The destruction of the Zarkoth superweapon sent shockwaves through the battle. The Allied fleet, seizing the moment, launched a coordinated assault that sent the enemy into retreat. But as Skora and Rhaegor's battered craft rejoined the fleet, long-range scanners detected a new threat approaching from the outer solar system. The Zarkoth, it seemed, were far from defeated. As they prepared to brief the human and Lemnorian leadership on their discoveries, Skora and Rhaegor knew that the true test of their newfound alliance was just beginning. The fate of two species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would hinge on their ability to stand united against the storm that was coming. Coming would test the limits of their newfound alliance. As Skora and Rhaegor's damaged craft docked with the flagship, they were immediately whisked away to a high-security briefing room. The chamber buzzed with tension as human and Lemnorian leaders gathered to hear their report. Grand Admiral Zorn stood at the head of the table, his piercing gaze fixed on the two heroes as they entered. "Commander Skora, Princess Rhaegor," Zorn nodded, "we're eager to hear what you've discovered." Skora stepped forward, his voice grave. "The situation is far worse than we anticipated. The Zarkoth aren't just conquerors, they're conducting horrific experiments on various species, including humans and Lemnorians. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Rhaegar activated a holographic display, showing images of the pods they'd encountered on the enemy ship. They appear to be developing some form of biological superweapon, she explained, her voice steady despite the horror of what she described. As Skora and Rhaegar detailed their findings, the mood in the room grew increasingly somber. The implications of the Zarkoth's actions were staggering, threatening not just Earth and Lemnoria, but potentially all sentient life in the galaxy. Grand Admiral Zorn's face hardened as he absorbed the information. We must strike now, while they're still reeling from the loss of their superweapon. A full-scale assault on their approaching fleet is our best chance to... He was cut off by General Hawthorne, the highest-ranking human military officer present. With all due respect, Admiral, we can't leave Earth defenseless. Our priority must be to fortify our defenses and protect our homeworld. The room erupted into heated debate, with human and Lemnorian leaders arguing strategy. Skora watched the exchange with growing concern, recognizing how easily their fragile alliance could fracture under pressure. Suddenly, a young lieutenant burst into the room, his face pale. "Sirs, we're receiving a transmission from a Zarkoth ship." The room fell silent as the main screen flickered to life. The image that appeared was not the fearsome visage of a Zarkoth warrior, but a tired-looking individual with softer features than they'd seen before. "I am Krell, Chief Scientist of the Zarkoth Biological Research Division," the alien said, its voice translated through the ship's systems. "I seek asylum with your alliance. In exchange, I offer critical information about my species' vulnerabilities." Skora's CIA training kicked in, his mind racing through the possibilities and potential risks. "We should bring him aboard for questioning," he suggested, turning to the assembled leaders. "The intelligence he could provide might be our best chance at stopping this invasion." Rhaegar nodded in agreement. "I concur. However, we must exercise extreme caution." After a tense discussion, the leadership agreed to Skora's proposal. As preparations were made to receive Krell under heavy guard, Rhaegar excused herself to oversee the medical treatment of the rescued prisoners. In the medical bay, Rhaegar worked alongside a team of human and Lemnorian doctors, her royal training forgotten as she rolled up her sleeves to help. As they examined the victims of Zarkoth experimentation, a startling discovery emerged. Dr. Alara, a renowned Lemnorian geneticist, called Rhaegar over to her workstation. "Princess, you need to see this," she said, her voice filled with awe-inspiring excitement. "The Zarkoth experiments, as horrific as they were, have resulted in an unexpected symbiosis between human and Lemnorian DNA." Rhaegar leaned in, her eyes widening as she studied the data. "Are you saying—" "Yes," Dr. Alara confirmed. "This could potentially solve our fertility crisis. The implications are enormous." As Rhaegar grappled with this revelation, alarms blared throughout the ship. She raced to the bridge, arriving just as Skora was preparing to lead a squadron against Zarkoth scout ships, attempting to penetrate Earth's atmosphere. "I'm coming with you," Rhaegar declared, leaving no room for argument. Moments later, they launched in a newly developed hybrid fighter, a seamless blend of human and Lemnorian technology. As they engaged the Zarkoth scouts in Earth's upper atmosphere, the true power of their combined knowledge became evident. Skora piloted the craft with unmatched skill, while Rhaegar's expertise with Lemnorian weapon systems allowed them to outmaneuver and outgun the enemy ships. Together, they led the squadron in a dazzling display of aerial combat, forcing the Zarkoth to retreat. As they returned to the flagship, victorious but wary, Skora couldn't shake the feeling that the scouts had been searching for something specific on Earth's surface. His suspicions were confirmed when they arrived at Krell's interrogation. The Zarkoth scientist, looking both exhausted and relieved, revealed the true motivation behind their invasion. "Our species is dying," Krell explained, his multifaceted eyes reflecting a deep sorrow. "Centuries of artificial enhancement have led to genetic degradation. Our leadership believes the key to our survival lies hidden on Earth, in ruins that predate human civilization." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Allied command. Skora's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We need to find these ruins before the Zarkoth do," he announced. "If we control this key to their survival, we might be able to negotiate a peace." Rhaegar, ever the diplomat, saw the potential in this approach. "Agreed. We should assemble a team immediately." As they began preparations for this crucial mission, the flagship's sensors detected a massive energy buildup within the approaching Zarkoth fleet. Krell's eyes widened in recognition and fear. "It's the cleansing light," he whispered. "A weapon capable of sterilizing entire planets. We don't have much time." Skora and Rhaegar shared a look of fierce dedication. The race to save Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, had begun in earnest. They would need every ounce of their combined skills, knowledge, and newly forged trust to face the challenges ahead. As they prepared to depart for Earth's surface, the weight of their mission hung heavy in the air. The future of human-Lemnorian relations, the fate of the Zarkoth, and the survival of countless species across the galaxy now rested on their shoulders. With one last check of their equipment, Skora and Rhaegar boarded their shuttle, ready to face whatever awaited them on the planet below. Below, the shuttle's descent was turbulent, buffeted by the chaos of the ongoing battle above. Skora's hands gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles tightening with tension as he navigated through a hail of debris and weapons fire. Princess Rhaegar sat beside him, her eyes closed in concentration as she used her Lemnorian abilities to scan for electromagnetic anomalies that might lead them to the ancient ruins. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. "There!" she exclaimed, pointing to a seemingly unremarkable stretch of jungle. "I sense something different." Skora nodded, adjusting their course. As they approached, the dense canopy parted, revealing a massive stone structure partially reclaimed by nature. The shuttle touched down in a small clearing, and they quickly disembarked, acutely aware of the time pressure. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a constant reminder of the Zarkoth's relentless assault on the planet. Skora checked his wrist computer, his face grim. "We have less than 20 minutes before the cleansing light reaches full power." They approached the entrance to the ruins, a towering archway covered in unfamiliar glyphs. Rhaegar ran her hand along the symbols, her brow furrowed in concentration. These markings? They're unlike anything in the Lemnorian archives. Skora pulled out a small device, scanning the area. "I'm picking up faint energy readings from inside. Whatever's in there, it's still active after all this time." They ventured into the dark interior, their way lit by the soft glow of Lemnorian light spheres. The air was thick with dust and the weight of ancient secrets. As they progressed deeper into the complex, the tremors from the surface battle grew more distant, replaced by an eerie silence. Suddenly, the narrow passageway opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood a pillar of swirling energy, pulsing with an otherworldly light. Surrounding it were consoles covered in the same mysterious glyphs they had seen at the entrance. "This must be it," Rhaegar breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "The genetic repository Krell spoke of." Skora approached one of the consoles, his hand hovering over its surface. "But how do we access it? We can't read these symbols, and we don't have time to decipher them." Rhaegar joined him, her face set with drive. "Perhaps we don't need to. My people have long believed in the power of mental connection. If we combine our minds, we might be able to interface directly with the system." Skora hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "We're out of options. Let's do it." They stood on either side of the console, clasping hands across its surface. Rhaegar closed her eyes, guiding Skora through the process of opening his mind. As their consciousness began to merge, the console beneath their hands hummed to life. A flood of information washed over them, centuries of knowledge compressed into moments. They saw the rise and fall of the precursor civilization, their achievements, and the cataclysm that led to their disappearance. Most importantly, they understood the true purpose of the repository, a safeguard against extinction, a way to preserve and protect life throughout the galaxy. In that moment of clarity, they knew what had to be done. Moving as one, their merged consciousness interfaced with the central pillar. Energy crackled around them as they initiated the repository's defense mechanism. A massive pulse erupted from the complex, spreading outward in an ever-expanding sphere. It washed over the planet, through the atmosphere, and into space. As it passed through the Zarkoth fleet, Their dreaded cleansing light sputtered and died, its power nullified by the ancient technology. But the pulse did more than simply neutralize the threat. It carried within it the cumulative genetic wisdom of the precursors, activating dormant sequences in all life forms it touched. The Zarkoth, their bodies racked by centuries of degradation, felt a change ripple through them. The genetic decay that had driven them to such desperate measures began to reverse. In orbit, the human Lemnorian fleet watched in awe as the pulse passed through their ships. Crew members of both species experienced a moment of profound connection, barriers of language and culture melting away in an instant of shared understanding. Back in the heart of the complex, Skora and Regor slowly separated, their minds reeling from the experience. They looked at each other with new eyes, their bond deepened beyond anything they could have imagined. "We did it," Skora said softly, his voice filled with wonder. Regor nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "We did more than stop the Zarkoth. We've changed everything." As they made their way back to the surface, they found a world transformed. The sounds of battle had been replaced by an eerie quiet. Emerging from the ruins, they saw former enemies helping one another, the lingering effects of the pulse fostering unprecedented cooperation. Skora's communicator crackled to life, Grand Admiral Zorn's voice coming through clearly. "Commander Skora, Princess Regor, report your status immediately. Something extraordinary has happened up here." As Skora began to explain, a Zarkoth ship descended from the clouds, landing nearby. Its hatch opened, and a group of Zarkoth emerged, their posture no longer aggressive but cautious and curious. One of them stepped forward, its multifaceted eyes reflecting a mix of confusion and hope. We no longer feel the decay that has plagued us for generations. What have you done?" Regor approached the Zarkoth, her hands open in a gesture of peace. "We've activated a legacy left by those who came before us all, a gift of life and understanding." As human, Lemnorian, and Zarkoth stood together on the jungle floor, the first tentative steps towards a new era of cooperation were taken. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in generations, it held the promise of unity rather than conflict. Skora watched as Regor began to explain the intricacies of what had transpired to the assembled group. He marveled at how far they had come from their first encounter, from captor and captive to partners in saving not just their own peoples, but an entire galaxy. As the sun began to set on this momentous day, Skora knew that their journey was just the beginning. The real work of building a lasting peace was just beginning. But with the bonds forged in the crucible of crisis, he felt a surge of optimism for the future that lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.